You ready?
Waiting for you.
All right.
What episode?
64. This is Byron Lazine and Nicole White, and you are tuned in to episode 64 of The Real Word.
Word is up.
Word is up, and a scary article on
Wow.
Inman
Getting
is also up.
Right into it, eh?
Yeah, I'm gonna get right into it
We're
because
here. Jeepers.
Gee, look at that.
You miss your old. You miss your
I
old.
do.
You miss it.
I know we got some comments in the DM.
People
that
didn't like it.
they
People
didn't
liked
like
our
the
people,
new-
and they liked our white table. They didn't like our black table. Who knew people were so specific?
Yeah, I like the other stands myself. I mean, look at this one. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna get right into it because one, we don't have a lot of time.
Well,
Nicole's got me pinched for time here.
Me?
So yeah, 100%. Nicole's got an appointment, so
wow.
we're gonna let her run off to the appointment. Is it a listing appointment?
It is.
All right, good.
Mm-hmm. It's a busy week.
That's
actually.
good news.
It's good.
That's good
Spring
news.
market's here.
But did you see the lawsuit?
I did. I believe I sent that one to you.
All right. So racket
Yep.
number one is a lawsuit that could literally, if it happens, unravel the entire real estate industry.
Well, the lawsuit has happened. You're
Correct.
just saying
if like it actually
if they're
is
found,
a viable
Yes.
class action lawsuit, and you have to get labeled or you have to get I don't know what the term is.
Yeah, let's not try to be attorneys today.
For a class action lawsuit,
Yep.
but like it just doesn't mean that it's automatically going to happen.
I hear you.
Right?
Yeah. I'm
yeah.
hearing you.
That's the way I understand
But it has been drafted. It has been sent. It is something that is happening.
We definitely are going to link this up as we do with all the articles. This is one, if you're an agent, you want to click and you want to read through and definitely pay attention to this ongoing story. The bombshell lawsuit that could undo the U.S. real estate industry. The suit alleges NAR, Realogy, Home Services of America, RE/MAX, and Keller Williams violate the Sherman Antitrust Act by requiring buyer-broker compensation. I've been very upfront that I do think there are some things about the real estate industry that are a total racket.
Mm-hmm.
One of those being, if you want to be on the MLS, you've got to be a member of NAR.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's what they get into here. It's like, okay, if you want your property on the MLS, or if you are an agent that wants to operate on the MLS,
Mm-hmm.
that agent has to be a member of NAR.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the MLS and most of these MLSs have rules,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on their standard board forms,
Mm-hmm.
that there has to be a buyer-broker compensation offered out.
Mm-hmm.
This seller, and this is just one home seller that came up with
Well,
this
it's
on
interesting though,
his-
because on short sales, you see a lot of times like zero. So,
Yep.
you have to obviously fill it out. It's a requirement.
It's a requirement to fill it up, to fill it out. And essentially this person is saying as a seller that they were forced to pay a buyer broker compensation. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because you could say, hey, if commissions are always 100% negotiable.
Right.
So you could say, hey, I'm asking for 6 or whatever the number is. And as a seller, you could say, well, no, I'm willing to pay you this, right? And then the seller's broker has to decide what, if anything, they're going to offer to this buyer agent.
Right.
Now, sometimes or a lot of times even, the seller doesn't even get that far with the conversation. They just know intuitively that commissions are on average X, and when they interview their agent, they pay that, and they don't really even ask too many questions about how the buyer agent's getting paid.
Well, that's really because, in all honesty, like technically, it's not really obviously the seller that's paying for the buyer broker, because they're paying company A, and then company A is then paying company B.
Correct.
So again, he's not necessarily being forced to pay out a buyer broker. The agent that he hired is giving up part of their commission in order to pay for the buyer broker in order to bring buyers to the listing.
Yeah, and so the complaint alleges that defendants use their control of MLSs and defendant franchisors use their agreements with their local franchisees and their influence among realtor leadership at both the national and local level to require brokers to adhere to NAR's rules, including the buyer broker commission rule, thereby increasing their profits substantially by receiving inflated buyer broker commissions and inflated total commissions. Now, if you want to get into what a buyer broker is worth, and if they're worth half of the commission or a substantial percentage of that total commission, I think that's a healthy discussion. The way buyers are really driving the bus and have as much information as they do at their fingertips, I do think that's a healthy discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think if I'm a seller, I'm taking that into consideration. If I'm hiring an agency that's going to do the best marketing
Mm-hmm.
and get the most exposure in my home,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to want to make sure that I'm taken care of and that my needs are at the top of their interest, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
how much they're compensating the buyer broker.
Mm-hmm.
I want majority of that commission probably to go into the efforts,
Mm-hmm.
the ads, the exposure run on selling my home if I'm the seller, which would leave less for that buyer broker.
But it's very interesting to me, though, because if you do look on MLS, quite often you'll see there's bonuses offered out to agents that bring buyers by a certain
Do you
by
think
a certain
that
time.
helps? Do you think that helps?
I don't, but my point.
I think that's a huge racket.
My point there is that the sellers still do believe that there is huge motivation behind the buyer broker and what is being offered, and should we offer more? I mean, there's times that I've seen buyer brokers that are being offered at 3.5%, and that's part of the marketing shtick. Like, hey, buyer brokers at 3.5%, like, and then there's like a bonus if you put under.
I've seen that too, and I've also done it myself in the past. And what I found, and I've had open house or broker opens where I invite the brokers and the agents, say, hey, we're giving 3.5% on this one. And once they're in their house, they're still like, I wouldn't bring any of my buyers here. You're offering 3.5% because the house sucks. And buyer agents don't want to bring, because a buyer has their list of homes that they want to see, right or wrong.
Yes.
They have their house. And so a lot of buyer agents are nervous about putting a new, not good experience agents, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like there are a lot of buyer agents that are nervous about putting a new house into that mix and really trying to push it, because they know their buyers have these homes that they want to see.
Yeah.
And they're going to be nervous about bringing, a shit property in, especially if there's an incentive that they're going to make more money off of it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm just saying, though, that you're seeing that being offered out more, and you definitely hear a lot more sellers sort of pushing that and thinking that would bring more buyers through.
And it does not.
No, and I'm just saying that it is very interesting, because it's still a shtick. It's still a hook. People still are offering it. Agents, I feel like, are still sort of pushing it.
You want to know what Mantil Williams, NAR's Vice President of Public Relations and Communications, said?
I'm glad you got that good.
He said the complaint is baseless and contains an abundance of false claims. So NAR doesn't think that this lawsuit has any credibility.
Mm-hmm.
They don't sound worried about it whatsoever. It's the way we've been doing business for years and years and years,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just brushing this off. If you go back and look at our last episode where we talk about NAR a little bit, NAR, this is actually who you are, okay? It's your time now, not to brush this off and go create more commercials. It's your time now to step up and squash this little lawsuit like the bug that it is. You need to put all of your eggs in this basket of protecting the people that pay you your dues.
Mm-hmm.
This is who you are, NAR.
Oh,
you are here. I figured it out. I figured it out for you, NAR. I've got it. Don't worry. This is who you are. Go out and protect us. Okay, we're paying you these fat dues every single year.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's time for you to step up and crush this lawsuit, right? And it's time for us to step up as an industry and be a little bit more open about, like, for instance, on our listing marketing package that we send out to prospective sellers, we clearly show every single seller how much of the percentage of the commission that we're keeping and how much that we're offering to buyer agents. And oh, by the way, there's a full 1% difference in there. And that disparity could grow even more, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say, tell us how you really feel about
how I
buyer
really
brokers.
feel is like the way that we're promoting property, the way that we're advertising properties, the way that we're listing properties, the value in getting the property sold, the pendulum is so much further on our side, the listing broker side, than the buyer agents. Even in a market like this, Connecticut, where there's a lot of inventory, and you would think that the buyer agents would have more control and would be driving the bus more. No, buyers are driving the bus. They're looking and finding the properties, and they're 9 times out of 10 hiring somebody to open the door.
Yeah. So I don't even know what to say on that, because I also disagree, because I just, as a buyer
you're
agent,
looking at the job that you do as a buyer agent.
Yes. And I'm
talking about the whole, the industry as a whole.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I'm listening.
I can't tell you how many buyer agents, especially on properties that we price correctly, we average, we do a great job getting it maximum exposure, are collecting a check just because they have a buyer broker form signed.
Right. Well, and obviously with Zillow leads, that's 9 times out of 10 what's probably happening too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of leads that I know come through, and they're probably looking at just that one, and then they're coming through and buying it. I like helping buyers buy. I do believe that I hold a lot of value for them in guiding them and, keeping the deal together, or just, a relationship with the other agent, helping that stay together, or at least just, during inspections, like what you should ask, what you shouldn't ask, who you should hire, like what can we do after? This is like a simple fix. Like I feel like there's a tremendous amount of value. And I do understand that you're talking about as like a whole and what you believe and what they should be paid.
I do think the lawsuit's a racket, because ultimately sellers do have, certainly the way we present it, here in Connecticut.
They have a say, you mean, over what's being offered out to
they have
a
a
buyer
say,
broker.
and it's their choice.
Right.
And so that's where I think the lawsuit's a racket.
I think the biggest problem here, though, unfortunately, is that, and I think it's a little bit of a racket, but I'm hearing them, but I think it's mostly a racket because you're really just paying the 5% to the brokerage that you're hiring. What we're doing with the money on the other end is really
6.
more is really more. No, you're not. You're actually, I wanted to offer out 0. You want to keep the 6, and then you
you said 5 before. I was just mentioning 6 is also a number.
Well, whatever. But I'm just saying, I'm keeping it.
They're looking for.
Anyway, because again, what you're giving out as a buyer broker really is up to your brokerage and that other brokerage. Like that's then the relationship between the two of them. So it's really not directly related to the seller, but it is very interesting. I mean, you've always talked about, buyer agents should be worried. Their job is sort of on the line. And clearly we're seeing more and more of that as the months go on. So
I see more of this coming over the next few years. I see buyer agent commissions continuing to get chipped away at, just because of where we are with tech. And certainly if I'm a seller, I want most of the money to go into that.
But it's interesting though too, because it almost turns it into like a, not directly, but it almost sort of turns it into like a for sale by owner type of situation, right? Because most for sale by owner, well, actually they're saving the listing side, because they are offering out a buyer broker still. So yeah, I guess it's
buyers would have to pay their buyer broker in that scenario.
Yeah, in that one, of course, yeah.
And
but,
so then,
but
FSBOs
try to save money. Sometimes the FSBOs aren't even offering out that much money. They're offering out like $200. So you're almost just like, gosh, like.
Here's what this does: if a buyer has to pay their buyer broker, okay, so they want their own representation. They don't want to go unrepresented. They want representation for negotiation and all that kind of stuff.
And it's on the contract already. Yeah. It's already on a.
And they're going to pay their buyer broker. What it does is it eliminates all of these buyers that are just like, you know what? I don't see value in real estate agents because I'm not actually paying them, right? So I'll just take the first person I meet in an open house, or I'll just take the first person that answers the call on Zillow. I'm actually now going to be interviewing who my buyer agent is, because that money's coming directly out of my pocket.
Right.
Right? We would have a lot less agents, because a lot of them would just forego the cost and would go unrepresented and would have no guidance and consultation, which I don't think is the right answer either.
It would be really super interesting to see what that compensation would be, though, too, because I feel like being a buyer agent is sometimes much easier.
It would be 1%. I'll tell you right now.
Well, because they've, you know, I'm going to be a little mean here, though, too, and sort of speculate a little bit, but I feel like, and I'm just talking about agents that are doing both. I'm not, because I know that there's lots of just buyer agents out there, strictly buyer agents. I know that there's strictly listing agents. So this is not necessarily force at that buyer's agent, but I do feel like a lot of agents, especially that are getting into the business, stick with the buyer end because they have a lot less kickback, you know, with a buyer. Like they're not having to argue their commission, they're not having to go over marketing plans, they're not having to say why they're so great. There's a lot less, you know, what's the word, over, you know, you don't have to
be an expert, you don't have to consult, you just can just go show homes and
I mean, a buyer may actually be able to find a buyer agent cheaper because they're just not good at negotiating for themselves.
Absolutely. The buyer agent commission would be way down.
Yeah.
So they're seeking the lawsuit seeks a class action status, so they don't have it yet, on behalf of home sellers who paid broker commission in the last 4 years since March 6th, 2015. There are 20 MLSs. The MLS list is on the, you can go look at the article.
It's very
We
interesting.
got to move on here. This is something we're definitely going to come back to as news comes out. This is something I'll be following very closely. Racket number 2. 63% of millennials.
Millennials?
Millennials.
I thought it was millennial. Millennials?
What is it?
You said millennial.
63% of millennials who bought homes have regrets, usually because they missed this one crucial step. So this is a CNBC article. The step, we'll just cut right to it. The step that they're referring to is underestimating the hidden costs associated with buying and owning a home, including the ongoing responsibilities of maintaining it, is the number one millennial homeowner frustration. And I'll just give you a couple other interesting stats. 63%, so nearly 2/3 of the millennials ages 23 to 38 that have bought a home, that are homeowners, have this regret, while only 35% of baby boomers who are homeowners say the same, and about 50% of Gen Xers, that 39 to 54 group, have the same remorse. So, 50% of Gen Xers is a lot, and then certainly 63% of millennials. Now, a lot of these millennials are first-time home buyers, so the baby boomers probably bought and sold a few times.
Yep.
So
it was also much more difficult, I believe, for baby boomers to purchase homes when they bought it, though, too. I mean, you were really doing 20% down. I mean, you were much more frugal. The interest rates were at like 20%. So, I mean, you were definitely having to make much logical decisions, and ones that, weren't.
Well, I find this all the time with first-time home buyers that, and a lot of times they understand their closing costs because it's they're trying to figure out how to make that payment and get that offer right. And so they're having a lot of conversation with their lender, and they do go in have an understanding on what that's going to mean for a monthly payment anyways, if they're paying points, the total closing cost to close the deal. They get that. What they don't understand is how much money it costs on top of your monthly payment to be a good homeowner, to actually have some pride in home ownership, to actually maintain your HVAC system, to actually maintain your furnace, to actually make sure your roof stays in good shape, to keep your landscaping up. A lot of people will buy their first home, and it's, that homeowner maybe was a baby boomer and the place was dialed in, the landscaping was perfect, everything looked great. You drive by 2 years later and it looks like a dumping ground, right? Because you've got two millennials that work all the time and that are out drinking lattes and doing all this kind of stuff, right? Doing whatever they're doing. And their home ends up looking like trash. This is the classic example. Millennial goes out, buys a home, immediately gets 3 dogs, gets some ugly fence to keep the dogs, from running out of the yard, and the dogs ruin the place, completely ruin the house, and because they're focused on the dog, and they don't see it, right? They don't realize that their house is now trash, that it smells like dog, I'm just beating up on the dogs
You
a little bit here. Don't come
really-
after
I
me,
mean,
PETA.
No,
But this is just the truth,
people
right?
like their dogs.
People like their dogs. You walk around their yard, there's nothing but landmines all over the frickin' place. They don't care about the landscape, and they don't care about anything. Then they go to sell the house.
Aren't you a millennial? You're like a
I
millennial.
am.
You're having dogs trash your house and drinking
I
lattes?
don't have any dogs, and I drink cappuccino. So big difference there between me and my millennial peers, all right?
Okay.
You don't see this? You don't see people just come. I see it the other way where people do obviously respect and maintain their home, but they just literally may not have the money to pay someone else to landscape, and then they run out of time. And so the landscaping is the first thing I see that usually goes to shit.
Of course. Well, I think what's interesting is that I'm sort of in the middle. Even at my own house, I mean, between kids and the size. I mean, you drive by my house in the spring and I'm not weeding. I mean, you totally underestimate the cost of, especially in my mind, landscaping. I mean,
every homeowner, no matter what age group you're in,
Yeah.
you should be putting in 1 to 3% of the value of your home a year back into your home. And this isn't upgrades, guys. This is just maintenance, right? Like if you have a wood
Right.
shingle home, it should be painted every 4 to 5 years.
Well, and what's really interesting though too on that topic is that and that doesn't necessarily make your home worth more. People,
that's what I mean. It does not make it worth more.
I just can't even. There's some people that like I bought it for this and I've put this much money into it and it's really just been like paint.
I painted
and
it 3 times.
I had and you're just you don't get your paint back.
If you if you have a $500,000 home, that means on money you never get back. If you have a $500,000 home, that you should be putting $5,000 to $15,000 back into your home every single year on maintenance. That means getting your furnace service. That means if there's wood, painting. You know, we have a homeowner right now who they paint a room every single year. You know, they're painting another interior room of their house. They're keeping it up perfectly because they're maintaining their value. They're not adding to, right?
Right.
So, or your faucet doesn't last you 30 years.
No.
Right? A kitchen faucet doesn't last 30 years. A toilet seat may not last you 30 years. A toilet may not last you 30 years. There's a lot of things that don't last 30 years. So every year you got to fix a few things. Maybe you've got, a window that's not on warranty that got the little bit of, leak going through the thermopane section there. You know, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you got to fix all the time.
That's why you rent.
This is why, this is why there's a lot of people renting. Absolutely. Because that cost is on the person that owns the property that's paying the taxes.
So definitely an interesting read. I'm curious of the millennials that are watching if you underestimated the cost or are you up against something? Because I'm certain that there's been at this point then in their lives like a trade-off.
And it ties into our last topic. If you're buying a home, do you have a good buyer agent? Even though I say they're devalued, but they're devalued because of how many people are doing a poor job representing buyers. Have you done your homework? Have you actually interviewed buyer agents to make sure that somebody is able to consult you through this process and help you be as prepared as you possibly can, not only buying the home, but from the day you take the keys and move forward? So that's what we've got. Drop us a comment if you're an agent about the lawsuit. I really would like your opinion. Are you worried? Yes or no in the comments. Let us know, and we'll see you guys here next week.
Bye, guys.
Keep it real.
Keep it real.